Hello, everyone. Welcome back to ForcedToPod, Force to White podcast production, whatever you want to call it. My name's Saxon, but you can call me Sax. With me tonight, I have a work friend turned lifer due to our shared love of Mexican food, video games, and general Midwest dad vibes. Also, soon to be wed, Nick. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are we feeling leading into the fateful week? I've had that invitation on my fridge for so long, it feels like.
Yeah. Not bad. A little anxious. Just there's pretty much everything's ready to go. There's just a lot of stuff that needs to be moved to a different location. Compounded by the fact that we now have a softball game Friday night, which is when we're supposed to check into our Airbnb at the venue. So, yeah.
Y'all should have lost.
We did lose. That's why we're playing on Friday.
Oh,
so
no.
double elimination.
No.
If we would have won, we would have played tomorrow. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you should have won.
We tried. I did my best.
It was a sort of a lose-lose situation, but not exactly.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it. I know I remember our wedding. We'll get into it here in a second, but I just remember our wedding. Just the feeling of like, okay, I know this is going to be a freaking awesome day, but the tinge of just dread of just like, I know there's going to be so many people here, and you're just on the whole day. So we'll get that in a second, though. And once again, rounding out our trio, the man who would rather always be outside, man, the myth, the legend, the one and only. I am the mountain man. Walker, how the hell are you?
Oh, I'm so good. I am unfortunately in a room instead of the trees, but alas.
Yeah, today we had some wicked weather here in the Louisville area, and we had our tornado sirens going off everywhere. We had birds flocking everywhere, going whatever, and I saw zero rain myself, but I feel like I was just like I was in the eye of the storm, and it just kind of moved right around me the entire time. So I did go outside for a little bit, touch a little grass, as I say.
That's typical Midwest weather.
Yeah, somehow we just dodged it like Neo. So anyways, this is our second episode of the podcast. Just want to say thank you, and that we appreciate all the support that we got so far on the first episode. Like I said in the last one, it might have been a little forceful. We appreciate you guys signing up. We, threw it out there, and it kind of just went live to the world. So we're looking forward to seeing what you guys are saying. Had some nice things come in and shared those with the boys. So also appreciate that if you hear or notice any mistakes we make. Nah, you didn't. Just be cool. We're new here. We're trying to do our best. So appreciate that. So, well, y'all, we do aspire to do this on a weekly basis. But I just wanted to talk here at the beginning, get some sad stuff out of the way, little personal stuff, but that's kind of what this is. We wanted an avenue, be a little timely with stuff. And so want to share this. Some people know, some people don't. So sorry if you're hearing this again. Last week, we were about to start recording the podcast, and I get a call from Heather. I had run out to the store, get a call from Heather. Something had happened to our older cat, Zoom. He wasn't moving. He didn't have anything going on with him. He was laying on the floor. Found him, and unfortunately, he had passed away. So we didn't really know what had happened. And so after some investigating, some different things, it seems like he may have had something, some sort of heart condition, something that we just didn't know about. And so it was very sudden. So appreciate you guys being flexible. The boys here, we were going to record. Obviously, that came up. I think it was more the sudden nature of it. Didn't really realize that a cat that was playing and happy just a few minutes earlier could really pass away. But I guess that's the nature of life, right? Just kind of,
yeah,
things are cyclical and things can happen at any time. So, but yeah, that was kind of a wild ride for us. So there's not a whole lot to say about it. I didn't know if you guys had any thoughts, because you guys were the first the first people that knew, just because you directly
canceled.
Yeah. It's actually just like, hey, sorry, I'm not going to be available tonight. Zoom just passed away. Like, okay, hold on. There's a weird duality to that sentence where you're like, sorry, it's very, very
Apologies.
Midwest of you. Like, oh, I'm so sorry I can't be available because one of my cats just died all of a sudden.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
there
that
really
was
was nothing,
huge bummer.
no other way to describe it. We were still kind of in shock ourselves. And honestly, it just, Heather, admittedly just kept, obviously we were both distraught because why wouldn't we be? But, just saying it feels like a dream or like feels like a nightmare. Like we're just going to wake up and going to be fine. And, he was the type of cat, he wanted to go everywhere with you. The classic, like, son of a bitch, I'm in. You start moving towards any door and he's like right there with you. So right before I left for the store, I was doing the thing, open the door, kind of push him back with your foot and stuff.
Right.
And then,
Come on.
That kind of thing. So, man, he was doing what he loved, and he was wrestling our younger cat, the infamous BK, as it is. They were wrestling just a few minutes earlier, and
Shout out, baby kitty.
Baby kitty. He's not so baby anymore, but he is our baby. So, yeah. So, anyways, that's what that is. Sorry, just for kind of taking things for a second, but just wanted to say we do intend on doing this on a weekly basis. However, that's kind of what happened. So, appreciate everyone's kind words. Everyone who had kind of heard and said and did all that. So, but yeah. But anyways, I kind of alluded to the topic I wanted to bring up. So I was going to bring it up last week, and then the one, obviously we're rolling forward. It might even be a little more timely for this week. But I was just thinking, I was like, man, it'd be cool to talk to the boys about weddings, marriage, and the reason being, not everyone would know this, but obviously Nick is engaged, but that is coming to an end very closely. Walker is also engaged.
One way or the other.
Yeah.
And that is not necessarily as close to ending. So I just wanted to kind of open the floor and say, like, what is, obviously we all have parents. That's how this thing works. But like, what is that experience? So let me start off. So for me, my parents, they got together very young. I know that they fought through, they had to work some things out when they were young. They shared some things with me. My dad's pretty private with stuff. I think he's a classic proud dad. Like, doesn't love to tell his son about the struggles and stuff. But my mom's, she shared a lot. And it's really helped because when Heather and I first got married, I mean, we were by no means perfect, right? We had been together a long time, but by no means perfect. And so hearing about their struggles early on, the things that they had to make it through, the times they actually lived apart, they never divorced, but the times that they lived apart, those have been helpful in hindsight. Because I'm like, okay, the parents that I feel like are so rock solid, like they had, they went through their bumps and bruises. So I guess, Nick, with your marriage coming up here pretty soon, what is your experience, and like what do you pull from that?
Well, yeah, at the risk of oversharing. So when I was, I don't even remember, 10, 11, 12, in that area, my parents split up. And then, my dad and my stepmom got married, and it's kind of weird. I'm sure you don't know because your parents have never divorced. So, not that, I'm holding that against you.
Sorry.
Just a little,
I guess.
Ill will. Yeah, no.
For what it's worth, my parents are divorced too. So you're the odd one out, Sax.
All right.
Yeah,
well, I love to hear about it because, sorry, not to interrupt, but just it's more of this feeling of like, it's context I don't have, but I also knew you guys both for an extended period of time before getting engaged. So bridging that gap is intriguing to me, right? Like that.
I think it'd be kind of hard though, because I was so young that I don't really truly remember what it's like having not two households, right?
Sure.
Interesting.
So most of my adolescence was spent in between, my mom's house, my dad's house. It's a weird situation because all my mom's family lives in Michigan. She currently lives in Michigan now, that we're all older.
Right.
And so there was a while where she would like she was working in Michigan, would come down on the weekends or whatever and stuff. So it was just a lot of logistics, I guess. So I
Sure.
probably feeds into me not really being stressed out about having a bunch of stuff to do all at the same time.
Right.
But it is interesting and kind of I don't want to say it was a good thing, maybe blessing in disguise, but my oldest kid, she's not my biological daughter, so we have to deal with some of that with her going to her dad's house and during the week or on the weekends and splitting holidays and stuff. So that's like, I'm used to that. That's not a weird thing for me. It's just part of how it goes. It's a little irritating sometimes. You're trying to plan stuff and you're like, okay, is she with us? Is she at her dad's house? We got to wait because, we don't want to take the youngest and go do cool, fun stuff while she's at her dad's house, not doing anything.
You can't. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that I don't even know really where I was going. But that, like, my parents have, when I say I use the term my parents in a couple different ways, usually depending on the audience. Like, I'll say my parents in reference to my dad, my stepmom, just because they've been together for so long. You know what I mean? My stepmom is a parent to me.
Right.
But my dad and my mom have not always gotten along with each other, but have, made it work for my and my brother's sake when we were younger and stuff. So that was even, in the times where they're arguing or not getting along, at least they were making an effort for our sake. So it's kind of being role models in a way that they probably didn't want to be, but it's helpful to see them like, okay, I don't like you, but I'll deal with it, kind of thing. So that's been helpful to give me a little perspective on like, yeah, there's going to be issues, battles, you pick and choose. Yeah. So I don't know. That's just my perspective.
Yeah. That's interesting. Just like the idea of the logistics game and things like learning inherently.
It's a freaking nightmare, dude.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the one weekend we got an opportunity to come up and swim at your house. Your
my
oldest
birthday last year.
I get them. I get the name slipped around. Which one's your oldest?
Riley.
Okay.
And Reagan.
So
they're both
so Riley
ours.
was gone, Reagan was there, and so we got to hang out. But I could tell Reagan was very bored because we were we were trying to hang out and we were doing whatever. But
yeah, she also has this thing where, especially when she was younger, she doesn't warm up to people. Definitely not like I do. How I am. I get along with anybody immediately. She won't talk. Like, even her best friend, her dad, like when we see him in public or at cheer practice or something, he will try and get Reagan to smile, like just saying hi to her or something, and she just does her best to ignore him and not talk to him and stuff. So it's really weird. Even some of my family's like, why doesn't she like me? I'm like, she just doesn't like anybody. And you have to, she's kind of like a cat. Once she warms up to you, she will not stop talking.
yeah.
And she'll tell you everything she knows. Yeah, it just takes a while for it to get, I don't know that necessarily she was bored, but there was a lot of strangers at the house that day.
That's fair. That is fair. So Walker, where do you come down on it? What do you think you kind of took away from, from your parents, things of that sort?
Yeah, no. So it's different, a lot different for me actually. So my parents got divorced probably only 3 years ago now, 3 years ago now. So very recently for me. And when was that actually? Geez, it might be longer than that now. Time flies, but
True.
I want to say it was.
Well, you got the COVID time warp in there.
No, that
just
2016 was last year.
Yeah, right. So it was recent. I was out of the house, and the reason I was the reason that I'm having trouble remembering is because the biggest takeaway I had from it was the difference it made me versus my two younger siblings. And I was out. I was doing my own thing. And they were not. They were, I believe my sister was, I actually don't know now, but my little brother certainly was still at the house. And I think my sister may have had been college for a year or two or something, but was still going home regularly at that point. And I was fully an independent adult and they were not, which that's the key takeaway. And I think that really did not help them to put it mildly. My parents' divorce wasn't like crazy acrimonious or anything. It was a long time coming, I think. And it was worse at the end. And, really slow ripping the Band-Aid off, which I don't think helped anybody.
Yeah.
So I got insulated from a lot of that, almost all of it, in fact, by just being gone and living my own life. And so I guess my takeaway is that there's definitely, I think my parents are both much happier now that they're divorced. And I think that it's a dirty word in a lot of ways in our society, but that, like you said, Nick, blessing in disguise. I hope both my parents are happier now. And in my impression, they are. So being in general, it's always better to talk about your feelings, even when those feelings are hard and uncomfortable, and it doesn't do anybody any favors by not doing so. That is why are you on this podcast then? Because this is what we're doing, baby.
Forced to feel. No.
Forced to therapy.
I know.
Yeah. No. So and I appreciate you guys sharing that, because that is a little, we're gonna lighten up here in a little bit, but okay. So the feeling of like looking and then trying to almost like a prism of some sort and like shining a light on it and just seeing what comes out the other side. I find that interesting when you kind of like put that in different contexts of stuff like in your past and kind of see it move forward. So like, we, maybe it's a bad joke, but we had this joke running with Heather's co-residents when she was in, when they were all still here in Louisville, that a couple of them, they mostly were from divorced families. And so this idea of like, it would come up often as like, hey, what are you guys doing for the holidays? And the joke was like, oh, they got it easy because we only had to go to like my family and Heather's family. And sometimes we could bundle them together because our parents like each other. So we could kind of like fell swoop that. Right. And we're like, well, what are you guys doing? They're like, well, we're from broken homes, so we have to do it. And so that was kind of the running joke that everyone was pointing towards themselves. And it almost felt kind of like the jabbing you guys were making. It was like, well, you're the odd man out. And so I guess I didn't realize how, I don't know. Definitely grew up more religious than maybe. I mean, I feel like both of you guys, but like than most of my friends that I have now. And so maybe that plays into it. However, there's a lot of people who stay together for a really long time that are divorced now, even though they were religious, folks.
So I've never set foot in a church in my life. Like,
it was a weird
a little more than you.
For us, we're like after my parents got divorced and then my dad and stepmom got together, like then we started going to church. We did like every Wednesday in elementary school they had like a little trailer at our off by the playground where we would do like Bible study kind of thing. Like if you wanted your kids, you could go. So I would just go so I wasn't left out, right? Like I wasn't sitting in the classroom. But then we did start going to church. Like my grandma and grandpa had gone when I was growing up, but then we started going pretty regularly. And then I fell out of that when I left high school. When I went to college, I was like, I got partying to do. I don't. It was, but that is. So I'm kind of in between both of you guys on that one. Like, didn't grow up per se in the church, but then had a sort of forced awakening, and then fell out of that.
Yeah. Well, so, to set the record straight, I actually have spent a lot of time in churches. I've never attended a. My parents both worked, so I had a like nanny for years and years. She was very religious, and so I spent a ton of time helping her run stuff for the church. So I did like a ton of church activities, but never attended a service.
Oh, okay.
You were doing more churchly things than most of those people sitting in the pews.
So we did the backpack, making backpacks for kids in the fall. And I ran the Easter egg hunt for the little kids and stuff. A ton of that sort of shit. So
you did
I spent a ton of time in church.
Yeah.
You did
never
the serving part. You did the important part, not the
admittedly,
important part's not sitting and listening to the old guy read Bible verses. It's the serving the community.
To be fair, Pastor Dwayne was a real fucking homie. Honestly, love that guy. He really did practice what he preached. But regardless.
That's rare in and of itself, but I think that's a different podcast. So
I've been on that podcast.
Yeah, you have. I did want to so circling back to the marriage thing, like I alluded to earlier. So knowing you guys both before, so I'll start with Nick. So we started working together at Marion, and then I don't know when it came up. We just sat there and talked about a million different things in the help desk office, because what else are we going to do? Answer the phones? No.
Not help people.
No. Yeah, absolutely help desk stuff.
Freaking IT.
So I just remember having conversations and like us discussing marriage and discussing like what that is. I know we've probably talked about it, but obviously it wasn't in a recorded format. So will you re-enlighten me? Like what brought you back to the point where it's like, all right, it's time to officially tie the knot?
I don't recall my exact line of thinking, but that's how I've operated most of my life, right? It's pretty impulsive.
Sure.
At this point, we've been together for almost 10 years. So we were dating for, I think, about 2 years when Reagan was born. Moved in together prior to her being born, but not very, pretty quickly after that is when she came around. So we were living together, doing all this stuff. Kids get to the point where they're in school. We talked about it. Kristen had done the quintessential, like, why don't you want to get married? We've had conversations several times. She was probably more patient with me than I deserved, even though sometimes it didn't feel like it. I don't know. It feels like we did everything backwards, right? We bought a house, cars, had kids, or basically at this point, all it means is we're doing joint taxes, right? There's obviously the component of like a long-term commitment and, being together with that one person, and everybody else knows that now. But I feel like at this point, and we've been engaged since 22, January 1st, I think 2022. So almost 2 years.
Almost 3 years.
Then
January,
maybe it was
23.
It must have been 23,
24.
January 1st, 23. I don't remember, because
25.
Well, it was almost 22, but it was
okay. Right, it was 23.
rolled over. So
yeah.
Sure.
Regardless, So she's been planning the wedding for a little over a year. I don't know, dude. My brain doesn't work with timelines. So yeah, it's like by that point where we did get engaged, it wasn't really as much of as big of a show of commitment, right? But again, it still means something. And my view forever was always like, marriage is pointless, and this might be because of how I grew up, but like, why do we have to involve the government? That kind of thing.
Right.
I've kind of obviously come around to the idea now, although when we first got engaged, I was like, hey, I think we should just go to the courthouse and not have a big wedding. It feels like it's going to be stressful and you're going to have a lot of anxiety about it. And the closer we get to the wedding date, the more Kristen has agreed that was the correct solution. However, everything is paid for and planned. So we will be having a wedding on Saturday.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I've always felt that marriage should be perfunctory, in fact. And so you've lived that ideal that I've so long espoused.
I would like
And
to apologize to your fiance for validating your thoughts,
right.
because
No, she,
from the other
well,
side, it looks incorrect.
right. Well, okay. So my thoughts on the matter are that, like, well, I do feel many people jump into marriage, and I had a very interesting discussion with an acquaintance in college about divorce rates among people who were religious and not religious, and specifically the dichotomy with people who lived together before they were married and who did not. And
Right.
there seem to be many confounding variables there. Um, are religious people more reticent to get a divorce? Are non-religious people more likely to get a divorce? Does living together, because they don't, because you live together, is your marriage less likely to end in divorce because you have more of a experience with one another, and know the foibles and can back out if you're really incompatible? Or does your lack of faith, as it were, mean that you hold less sanctity to the institution? So there's it basically, after many studies, my recollection was that people don't really know and they can't tell.
Right.
But I've come down on the side of you should live together before you get married. I don't know if you should have a kid before you get married. You'll have to tell me how that
Well,
one works out. But I think it's interesting because do you feel, I would ask, do you feel that it is perfunctory? Like the lifelong commitment aspect is the biggest one for me. And when you have a kid with somebody, that commitment is made, no matter whether you're like romantically involved or not. You are in that person's life in perpetuity.
yeah.
So
I did a lot of that same reasoning. I would like to say this. I think if you are thinking about getting married or trying to, or I don't know, decide, weigh the options or whatever, it's very important that you come to your own personal philosophy, and that you have a sound foundation in that. And then once you decide or gather enough evidence that is sufficient for you, then you have that conversation with whomever you would like to wed. Um, because, like you said, I think a lot of people who get married after dating for not very long or whatever might have differing philosophies or core tenets that they hold that don't mesh, and that's a real problem. Um, I was kind of the same way, although maybe subconsciously used as an excuse to not have to like do the whole proposal thing.
sure.
Like, we should definitely live together for a certain amount of time. I do think that that's important because there are things that I do, that she does, that our children do, that are absolutely so goddamn annoying.
Yeah. Yep.
But I can live with that, right? And
Right.
so uh to and then there's an added, could spur a whole separate conversation, but there is an added thing, variable, where your partner, if you are a male in a heterosexual relationship, if your girlfriend, fiance, whatever, is like taking birth control or anything that could affect your hormones, it might be worthwhile to have them stop that and see if they're, because your personality can fundamentally change depending on what hormones you're taking and how long you've been doing it. So that's a whole another thing, biologically, that you'd have to worry about, because you could be, it changes your biology, your whole level of attraction to certain people or certain things, and that could flip a switch and you guys could be not having a good time afterwards. But I could be wrong. It doesn't work like that for everybody. But yeah, so back to what I was saying. I think it's very important for you to understand what it means to you before you decide to offer that
Yeah.
proposal to somebody else.
Know
Yeah.
thyself, as it were, at the end of the day.
I don't know shit about myself, but I do know. Well, it changes all the time, right?
That's good. It should, but
I'm
That
growing up still. My cerebral cortex is not fully developed as a 35-year-old man.
Yeah, I think on Saturday it might fully form because something about you getting a second brain,
I think
something you guys becoming one.
I'm probably gonna lose some brain cells at the reception, so we'll see. It might be a wash.
cheers.
As you should. So yeah, we're really looking forward to coming and celebrating with you guys. We've made it through the gauntlet that is Heather having nearly infinite friends, and guys just, I mean, myself, I just didn't. Like I have friends, but a lot of my friends were
Yeah.
older than me, so they were already married by the time
Right.
I got married, that kind of thing. And so made it through all of that. And so, I mean, knock on wood, but like, I've not been to another wedding this year.
Oof.
Not that I can remember at this point. And so that's honestly an honor that I get to go and have fun and vibe at a singular wedding. And it's my thing because Heather she's perpetual bridesmaid. So I'm going to all
Right.
these weddings. And if I wasn't, I was either just in the crowd while she's in the party, and we
Yeah.
drove 2 cars to the thing and all
Oh,
that
that's
stuff, and it's out of
Oh
town, so
yeah.
we're driving an hour and a half back and all this stuff and whatever. Or I had to come early, drop her off, and then just hang out in town all day, do whatever. Or I was the DJ for their wedding because she's already in there and they know that I
It's like,
DJ, and I had at a time I had all the equipment for it, so I really
yeah.
enjoyed doing that.
Yeah.
And I would
In
like to get the equipment again at some point, but
the initial planning stages, there was a chance that I was going to ask you to DJ, but I figured for the specific reason that I didn't want you to have to work at the event.
well, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of times where that sentiment has been held, and then someone's dropped out or something hasn't happened, or something. And to be honest, some of those have been extremely fun times. But I do understand the coming down on it. The other side of it is like having your friends who do things in the wedding industry, something of that sort, can be tough. So I'm actually moving into the world where I want to officiate more weddings. So during COVID, I did my cousin's wedding and I got to officiate. It was just very small thing. We had a few people like holding up their phones, doing FaceTime or whatever, showing it. Love that.
Sure.
I love it. I love doing the ceremony. I loved, it was a short thing. I think it was about 10 minutes. So, they had some stuff they wanted to say, and we did the prayers and stuff of that sort. But I am actively looking to officiate more weddings. So this is what I'm saying. I'm gonna say it straight to the camera. Any of my Forced to Wipe family, friends, anyone, if you guys are getting married, you need an officiant, call me up. Heather and I will fly out. We're looking forward to it. So, but we'll come and just party with you as well. So, one last thing I did want to ask you guys about the topic of marriage, and then we'll probably move on. Where do you guys come down on the whole finances thing? Do you intend to blend finances? Have you already? Do you guys just talk about it, but you say, okay, my money's here, my money's there, in separate shells, and then have like the joint thing? Where do you come down on that? And I'll give a little. So Heather and I, it's an interesting situation because we got married. She finished her first 4 years of undergrad, straight out of high school, straight into undergrad, first 4 years. And then we knew the trajectory she had. She had a lot of secondary education she was doing. So we got married after she graduated. And then she went straight into dental school. And then from that changed straight into her ortho residency. So she didn't have any time to work. So she's not making any monies. So it's like we didn't have an option to that point. But we're still involved in everything together, right? Like I mean, the big core decisions and stuff like that. But you guys coming in as having these professional lives and doing things like this, and then I'm just interested. Walker, I'll start with you. Where do you guys? I mean, are you guys still talking about this? Is this something that you're working through, or how are you feeling about it?
So we haven't blended our finances yet, but I'm very firmly on the fully mixed. So Chloe is in school still right now. She's another perpetual nerd. She's got another probably 8 years of stuff till she makes decent money. But I mean, what am I supposed to do? Not pay for the things that we need. It's not. I mean, not that I'm upset about that, but there's really no other option, honestly, and that's fine. It's no problem. She's actually extremely cheap. It's remarkable. Like her favorite hobby is going to find clothes for less money, like remarkably less money than they cost. Like the biggest hit for her is it doesn't matter how expensive something was or cheap it was to begin with. What she's looking for is the delta, the size of that delta to how much she paid. So the high is I saved X amount of money, which is great. Super easy for me. Very relaxing.
Yeah.
I'm the expensive one. Very much, which is fine because I have the paycheck for the moment.
It's true.
We've had zero conversations about blending, bank accounts or putting money into different accounts or whatever. But we have lived together for 8 years and functioned pretty much in the same way. Really, like we kind of just split utilities and all of our bills and stuff. So it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, right? If I'm paying for the internet bill or she's paying for the car insurance or whatever, because if one of us doesn't have enough money, the other is going to pay for that thing, right? Which is, It's not really a problem. She does well at work and I do enough, probably better than I should for the amount of work that I put in. Don't send this video to my boss. Yeah. So yeah. And, I have a lot of stupid, expensive hobbies because I'm an idiot. She does not, because she spends all of her free time and money on our children. So yeah, which are very expensive, by the way. Even when they get out of the like diapers and baby food stage, now they're playing softball and doing cheerleading, and middle school cheerleading uniforms cost upwards of $700 or something
What
ridiculous.
the
It's
fuck?
just
$700, bro.
Yeah, it's wild. It's
That's
nuts.
fucked up, honestly.
And then the crazy thing is that she's in 7th grade, so in a few years there will be another vehicle that needs to be paid for and insured and taken care of and stuff. So yeah, normally it's, hey, we have everything paid for. Oh, by the way, this package showed up. It was a thing I ordered for myself or whatever. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, you paid the car insurance this month, so I'm not going to get mad that you bought something. So yeah, I think we're looking forward to the tax implications. Like filing taxes is a nightmare in our house because of Riley not being my child. And then like it kind of works out for us because we can both claim a dependent as a single parent.
Okay.
And so that really kind of ups your return value. I think that'll change, but more importantly, things like health insurance and stuff are going to be easier. The insurance that I have through my company is actually really good, which makes sense because I work for a company that is basically an insurance company. So we have a lot of perks and benefits and stuff. And so being able to add her to that and being able to pay for, like, I have a really good HSA account that I can only use for me or Reagan because she's my dependent. But if I can extend that to everybody else, that would be easier. It's less money. I mean, I'm paying for it, right? It comes out of my paycheck, but it's pre-tax, and and so that would just make things easier. So yeah, the joint like financial responsibility part with the IRS and insurance and stuff is going to be better. I'm sure this is thrilling conversation that everybody wanted to hear about, but
this is important stuff.
It is. It really is. You have to, like, it's not just like, oh, you're going to be my best friend for forever and we're going to go have a good time. Like, you're going to have to figure out how to make shit work. And, I mean, we've gone through hopefully the last of the periods where we're like, hey, how are we going to pay for this? Because, I don't have a good job or in between jobs or whatever. So that's been helpful too. Because now we know that we can operate on a bare bones, but we don't have to right now. And that's nice.
Yeah. That's another good thing to, I think people who are getting married should have to struggle together in some way, at least. To really see and travel together. You got to travel with somebody before you get married to them. You got to see how they treat flight attendants.
Here's a quick tidbit. Our travel is our philosophies are fundamentally different. I will happily wait in an airport for 3 hours and fly for 2 hours and maybe get delayed for another hour or two before I ever want to drive 16 hours to South Florida from Indiana. I hate it so much. And Kristen's
This
like,
sounds specific.
we can just drive overnight and the kids will sleep most of the time. And I'm like, yeah, but it's the work. I hate it so much.
Yep.
So yeah, it's fun. We get to have that argument every time we go somewhere. Well, are we going to drive or fly? Like, I know a flight costs $1,000, but to me, it's worth it.
Yeah, we're kind of falling in a very similar realm where like I'm being strategic when I talk to Heather about these little trips we want to take. I'm edging on the side of like, oh, I want them to be too far to reasonably drive, right? Because if it's gonna be a weekend trip,
Right.
let's hop on a plane and go, and then we're there quicker, and do whatever. And she's of the mindset, and her and her parents. I mean, we went. This was absolutely miserable, but we went. We drove over 16 hours to like the depths of Florida twice in a year.
Yep.
We did it in the summertime, and then we did it for Christmas. We did it with summertime with one of her friends. It was like the first year after we got married, we drove down there, just split like an Airbnb. It was a fun vacation. The drive was miserable. And then the next time it was a tailgating basically we just followed them and went all the way down to, even further the second time for Christmas. And it was miserable. And yeah, I'm at this point where I'm like, we can, especially when it's just the two of us. I mean, we can fly and stuff. I know there's implications when you have a baby and do that. So,
well, yeah.
But
well, if you live in the Midwest and you're going to Florida, you can get cheap flights on, what's the airline? Oh boy, I'm blanking.
Allegiant, Southwest, United, Delta.
Allegiant.
Yeah,
Allegiant, and they fly Airbus, not Boeing, so you're not going to fucking crash and die on the way there.
That's sick. Yeah, Boeing. Oh God, as an engineer, they fucked up fundamentally.
Yeah, some of the things going on there, but well, boys, I appreciate you hanging in there with me through the wedding marriage topic. I was just interested.
No,
we
hadn't
really talked about it or anything like that. So we're gonna take a hard right turn. No good segue to this, but Walker, why don't you introduce your topic? Because I know next to nothing about it, and I need you to enlighten me.
This is something that's on my mind a lot. So we're gonna have a little talk about environmentalism. As the resident mountain man, I have very strong feelings about protecting the environment, and this is one of those pedantry moments for me. But I get mad when people tout electric vehicles as a silver bullet, and they're great and they help a lot, but they're not perfect. And so this comes back to something called corporate average fuel economy standards, which is what we're going to talk about right now. And this is a blending discussion. You're going to get a little lecture on it. So CAFE standards, people are, back in the 60s and 70s, nobody gave a shit about how much gas anything ate because
those cars were sick.
And those cars were in fact sick. Regardless, gas got expensive for reasons. And people started to realize, hey, man, let's not breathe CO2 all the time. So the government decided that they would put into place some standards that legislate how fuel efficient a car can be based on its size. You think, oh, that's great. Okay, you can't expect a F-150 to meet the same as a Prius. It's not reasonable, right? Well, okay, sure. However, this has created this horrible, perverse incentive where instead of making cars more fuel efficient, the car manufacturers just make them fucking bigger.
It is, as somebody who drives a small car, it's unreasonable how large vehicles are on the roadways now.
And so because the metric they use for size is square inches of wheelbase, I think, or something like the amount of ground the vehicle occludes. Everybody's like, okay, fuck you. I'm going to make this F-150 5 inches longer. And then we don't have to make the engine more efficient for another year or whatever. I don't know exactly the numbers, but year over year, the efficiency of newly sold vehicles has to increase steadily based on the category into which it falls. And so trucks get around this, specifically large SUVs, and there's other confounding variables like people can't afford a new vehicle, and so you don't just buy a work truck anymore. You buy your vehicle, which has to also carry your kids and whatnot, and you want it to be luxury because you're spending so much money on it already, and then so on and so forth, and it gets bigger. But it's created this horrible, cycle where cars get huge, and then people are like, well, maybe we can try some electric vehicles. And they're great. Electric vehicles are awesome. However, they're much heavier than regular ICE vehicles. And so you have vehicles that are now bigger and heavier. So you have something like a Rivian or a Cybertruck or a Ford Lightning that are just so heavy. And we're not taking into account the damage that these cause in accidents. We're not taking into account the damage they cause to people when you smack them with. Are you Googling, Nick? How much does a F-150 Lightning weigh?
Cybertruck weighs 6,800 pounds.
Yeah, so that's absurd.
So for reference, my Fiesta ST weighs 2,700 pounds.
And that's still pretty heavy, right? So like that is monstrously large, and this just causes a lot of problems. And one thing that we're going to have to deal with is heavier electric vehicles cause more road damage, and the roads will need to be repaired. And so everybody gets all, like, oh, well, the CAFE standards, they're broken, so we should go electric. And there's problems with the weight, but also fully electric vehicles. I'm not against them. However, they're not actually as efficient at saving the environment as people think. And there's a reason that Toyota, whom I adore, does not have actually that many fully electric vehicles, because at the end of the day, the amount of rare earth metals it requires to make one fully electric vehicle what the number they quote is it can make 6 plug-in hybrids or 90 non-plug-in hybrids. So the number of people you can get in a vehicle that is much more fuel efficient. You make a non-plug-in hybrid, you can get somebody from a vehicle that's getting 22 miles per gallon to like 40 miles per gallon, 38. You're functionally doubled their fuel economy. Yes, a fully electric vehicle can get like 100 mpge, and we don't need to get into like the discrepancies about how you're, charging these vehicles. And this changes the numbers a lot as well, full disclosure. But people should get plug-in hybrids and don't be too eager to get off gas just yet, because it's mining for rare earth metals is really bad too. That's my spiel. So everything has trade-offs.
I do like kind of an offshoot of this conversation where like the CAFE standards for making everything has to be more fuel efficient has driven a lot of innovation in internal combustion engines.
Oh,
so
yeah,
like,
it has.
Like, for instance, my dad drives a Ford Expedition Max. It's the biggest one they have. Like it's humongous. It's absurdly huge. It's a problem on the road. Its turn radius sucks. It has the 3.5 liter twin turbo EcoBoost engine that puts out 400 horsepower. And it's, a V6. It's ridiculous.
That is very impressive.
It's not even tuned, right? I mean, it's the Sport, right? So it has a little niftier suspension or whatever. But yeah, it was just like stuff like that. Even the new, F-150s, not the electric ones, are putting 3.5 V6s with turbos in them. The new Mustangs have the EcoBoost Mustangs will go fast, and they're like, I think V6 EcoBoost turbos. Like I as a car guy who likes engines that make small explosions to go, really appreciate what some of the technology that's going into motors now. Although the monkey's paw to that is that when you try and fix them, it's a goddamn nightmare, because everything is electronically controlled and timed, and you have a full blown computer that you can't just cut parts off and weld new parts on without changing sensors and fuel mapping and all kinds of stuff. No, but that's we could have a whole separate discussion about car stuff.
Yeah, no, I am not. In the interest of full disclosure, I own a '94 Bronco that gets like 10 miles per gallon.
It's so
So
cool.
I am
cool.
not.
It is sick
which
as hell.
it's a fucking awesome car. I love it to death. However, I am not. It there, and this brings me to another point. It is actually technically better for some amount of time, which I have now exceeded, to keep an old vehicle on the road than buying a new one. So the other thing with electric vehicles is, compared to a full internal combustion engine car, and especially when you compare to these plug-in hybrids or non-plug-in hybrids, the payback period, again, many, many variables going into this equation, is somewhere around 2 to 5 years, the carbon payback period. So the amount of energy it takes to build an electric vehicle, it is greater than an internal combustion engine vehicle. And so you will pay that back somewhere around year 2 to 5, depending on, again, what style of electric vehicle it is, how big it is, how you're charging it, where that energy is coming from, so on and so forth. But a lot of people don't keep their cars for more than like 3 years. So if you're just buying a new electric vehicle every 3 years, you're also not helping the planet at all. So electric vehicles are extremely good. And when we can improve that technology and have, all of our energy coming from the sun and charging them that way and so on and so forth, it'll be great. We need to keep advancing the technology, but it's not a silver bullet. And just think about what you're getting, because you can do better from the environment than just buying a full electric. Consumerism is bad.
Yeah, I honestly, I mean, we've had many conversations about what our next vehicle will be. And of course, putting context
Race
around
car.
this, I have 2 payments left on my car.
Hell yeah.
I have 2 payments left. Not even full 2 payments. I have a payment and a half left. And I literally just on Saturday paid for new brakes on the back, and I had 2 tires that had one had a screw in it, one had a nail in it. I was just sick of putting air in it, depending on how it was sitting in my garage, filling it back up. It was so annoying. And so take it in there, and I'm like, okay, well, this was more than my car payment typically would be. However, I'm not doing that every month, going that way. But we've been having that conversation a lot recently. Actually, before I canceled the pod last week, I was going to have a segment that says, Walker and Nick diagnosed what is wrong with Heather's car, because all coolant was gone. That's actually where I was when she called me and told me Zoom had
I think we did talk about that.
I was going to get coolant. Yes, I just don't
know.
know.
Coolant leak.
Yeah,
I just don't know. I don't know where
Sax and I had a conversation about it. There's no coolant on the floor, so the potential is that there's a coolant leak inside the engine, and that's a problem.
Well, does the engine turn on?
It does. It does turn on. Her car, that could be a full other episode in and of itself. But her car's fully paid off. And my car's soon to be paid off, but we are talking about what our next vehicle is going to be. I really, really want a truck. Do I need a truck? Probably not. I really, really want one.
You could get, in 2025, Ford is making a Maverick that's called the Lobo, which is like a street race car truck style. It's not super race car-y, but it's like a more aggressive
tuned,
body kit, suspension tuned. Yeah, it's I want it so bad, but my car will be paid off in the summer. Kristen's car is hanging on by a thread, and she's very adamant that the next car that we get is going to be hers. She wants an SUV. We have 2 smaller vehicles. So I don't think I'll be getting a race car truck anytime soon.
I do. I also have a Maverick, and I love it. It was my compromise, because I wanted a truck, but I wanted something more fuel efficient than the Bronco. It's a great
I would like
car.
a Ranger, but I feel like the Rangers are too big.
If you per my last email, Toyota has these plug-in, non-plug-in hybrid. I don't know if they're plug-in or not, but like the iForce Max powertrain that they have in the Tacoma and the Tundra, you can probably get something that is more fuel efficient, because you just need to squeeze a little bit more out of it to be, very substantially improved over a full combustion engine.
I'm kind of tied to either GM or Ford in that we get whatever their the A plan for Ford is like the employee pricing, and then Kristen's grandpa
Oh,
is able to get the whatever the employee pricing program is called
okay.
for GM.
Well,
So
that's pretty
it's a
big. Yeah,
significant it's
I
a
get that.
significant chunk out of the price. But
Yeah.
regardless,
Well,
yeah. Sax, I do think we should have a segment about telling you what's wrong with Heather's
yeah.
car. I like
And then
doing
what
that.
car
I
should you
like
buy?
doing that for other
Yeah.
people's cars. I really hate figuring out what's wrong with my cars.
Mm-hmm.
It's a ton of fun.
Yeah.
But that's my stump speech for this evening.
Well, I mean, it is super interesting because I don't know. I guess I don't think often about the size of cars around just because, like, I don't know. The only thing I think of is because my car sits pretty low to the ground,
Mm.
so I think of the height, like the amount of times like I pull out the apartment complex that we lived in before we moved into this house. There was this like it was right by an intersection, very busy street. Like if you were coming out around like any rush hour time, morning or evening, it'd be really hard to see, if you wanted to make a right hand turn on red. Like I don't know why, but like these big ass trucks, they'd act like they couldn't see right over me and they just keep creeping forward. And I'm like, dude, I cannot see anything.
Right.
And it could be clear as day, but I can't tell.
No.
And like I don't even know why you're moving forward. You're turning left, and obviously you can't do that right now. And so it's just one of those things where I was like, man, just to get up off the ground would be nice, do whatever. But yeah, I drive a 2017 Chevy Impala with nearly infinite legroom. I love it so
Mm-hmm.
much. And that's where I come down on it is I actually had a Hyundai Tucson. I don't even remember what year it was, like 2012, 2013. Back before this car, and it is bigger. Like internally, it was bigger, but the seat didn't slide back far enough, and so I'm
Yeah.
big old boy, and so I
Yeah,
just
I can't relate
needed
to
more
being
space.
6'4", so
Yeah,
that's why I bought
so
a Fiesta.
yeah, I
Also
do
turbo.
like riding around your car though. It was fun. So well, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I appreciate the enlightenment. That's why I said I had no idea what those cafe standards were. I looked at it for about 2 minutes. I'm like, all right, Walker's gonna fill me in
I'll
on
break it
this, but
down.
I do think it's an interesting conversation. And yeah, we've had that electric conversation on like, where we come down. We actually, the house we moved into, it has the connections for a plug-in,
Yeah.
a full electric.
Yeah.
We could do that if we wanted to. I have looked at the Rivian a lot. They're so expensive,
It's
so
crazy.
expensive. Not
That's
to
the other
not
thing.
to mention, I just looked it up, 7,100 pounds.
Yeah. I mean,
Ooh.
it's just
So heavier than the Cybertruck.
if you hit something, you
The
will kill.
R1T 2025. First thing in Google popped up.
Well,
So
it's because the Cybertruck's a piece of shit and the subframe's fucking aluminum or some shit.
We have a bunch of them around here as well, and it is
yeah,
always funny to see.
I don't want to start on the
My professional
Cybertruck hate
engineering
discussion.
opinion is that the Cybertruck can kiss my ass. On the record.
Agreed. On the other hand, I have a couple of friends who are driving Mustang Mach-E's. Curb weight is 4,500 pounds, which is still really heavy, but and they're cool. They're cool as hell. I at first I was a little off board with the like, why are we using the Mustang moniker on a crossover fully electric? But they're cool cars and they're fast. So
they are cool.
Yeah.
The little infotainment center had a dude. I don't know why he was driving that, doing DoorDash one day. He delivered some food, but he couldn't find our place because Google Maps doesn't have it like dialed in quite yet. So I had to go out and be like, kind of wave him down. And I just met him because it feels awkward for me to just stand on the porch and make him like, he pulled up on the curb and then like make him come all the way. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to meet you. You drove it all the way here and did that. And I was like, okay, the interior of that car looks so freaking sick. He's like, yeah, it's not my car. It's so-and-so's car. I'm in from out of town, but I deliver when I'm back home. So I can just like move my location to the city and they let me drive it. I'm like, well, there are definitely worse cars you could be delivering food in. So it was real sick. So, but all right, Nick, you sent something over. We were talking about, we were trying to figure out what we were going to talk about. And you sent something over, and I would love for you to dive in on this.
Yeah, I was contemplating a full pivot to discussing DoorDash, and there's like a illegal ring of people renting DoorDash accounts and stuff.
What the fuck?
Huh.
It's a. I'll save it for next
To
time.
have food delivered to them or
No,
to
no, no.
deliver food?
Like undocumented workers who don't have a driver's license or social security number can
Okay.
pay
Gotcha.
certain people illegal brokerages to have an account so that they can make money. It's this big long article I read in the latest issue of Wired. We could talk about it at some other point. It was fascinating. Yeah, so we had talked earlier about what we wanted to talk about today, and I had a lot going on today. I had to shore up a bunch of things at work since I'm going to be off for the rest of the week. We had softball game tonight, so I was just kind of, while I was waiting for dinner to be ready, mindlessly scrolling and found this tweet / Tumblr post.
Sure.
Which I actually found it on Facebook, so I'm just incorporating all of the millennial social medias into one.
Oh God.
Yeah, I joke a lot with my sister that the most millennial thing I do is respond in mostly GIFs and also send her Facebook Reels. So it was a tweet that said, I'm inventing a new lifestyle philosophy called the 9 delights, where each day you try to experience at least 3 of the 9 delights. And the 9 delights are walking around, fellowship, deliciousness, transcendence, goofing, amelioration.
Which I thought was gooning at first, and that's something completely different.
Yeah, so. I'm not starting that conversation. Coitus, which is on par, I guess. It's on topic with gooning. Enthrallment, and then a wild card. So there's a breakdown of this post of basically what each of these mean, if you're not familiar with the word. So walking around is self-explanatory. Just go touch grass, right? Do something, move around, do something. I find that for me specifically, if I'm having some anxiety issues, just like I'll go out in the backyard, just walk circles around the pool, just hang out or do whatever, scroll on my phone, but walk. Fellowship is one of my favorite things. First of all, it's a kick-ass movie, right? Second of all,
yes,
hanging out with your friends is great. It's one of my favorite things to do because I have cool friends. Deliciousness is defined as just have something tasty, which I think is important to do in moderation. But tasty things are great. And I have a group of friends that are pretty big into like full on cooking, interesting new things, growing hot peppers and different stuff in the garden and making new recipes out of that. So that's fun.
Hashtag forced to cook.
Yes.
Get the apron.
It's upstairs. I would throw it up, but it's upstairs.
I was telling our listeners.
Oh yeah. Go buy the apron right now. It's actually, I used it recently. It's awesome.
We did too.
Transcendence, feeling that you have reached a different level of some sort. So all the gamers know about leveling up. Alternatively, when you do one of the other delights to the extreme and feel really good about it. So yeah, fellowship, you can transcend. You're having, a great night laughing with your buds or go get a couple drinks at the bar or whatever. Goofing, having a good laugh at something. I'm pretty good about that. I will have a good laugh about just about anything, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. Amelioration is one that I had not known what the word meant, but they defined it as working towards the betterment of something. For example, working on a skill you hope to improve. For example, call back to me having stupid expensive hobbies. I have recently purchased a compound bow that I would like to use to go shoot wild animals. And there is a definite and arduous period of shooting it a million fucking times until you are good enough to reasonably make an ethical kill for an animal, which could be a whole separate conversation. I think we started in the previous episode. Coitus is defined as FU, and the rest of it is blanked out. So if you don't know what coitus is, Google it on your work computer.
In front of your boss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, just ask your boss. Enthrallment
Teams
is
message.
Enthrallment, becoming incredibly engaged in something, hyper focusing on something. I think to me that means something different than having ADHD, because I can hyper focus on some really dumb stuff, right? But being enthralled by something is a little different. You are hyper focused, but I think you are not doing it as a way to scratch an itch in your brain. It's for the love of the game kind of thing. And then the wild card is anything that you feel was a delight in your day that does not fit one of the above delights. For me, just during our softball game, there are a couple of girls on the team. So it's 8U, which means anybody who is 8 or younger as of a certain date, per defined by the league. It's coach's pitch. So I pitch to them, and I have several kids, not several, but a handful of kids on the team that have not played before, and so therefore are not used to, batting, which explaining proper hitting form to an 8-year-old is a whole separate thing. It's very difficult. But a couple of them had like really good hits and plays in the game tonight. So that was kind of a wild card for me. But I just thought it'd be fun to bring this up because I know a lot of people that we know and interact with do a lot of this stuff, maybe, subconsciously all the time. And so just to kind of focus on the little things, but not necessarily even the little things, but like finding some sort of meaning in some stuff that would otherwise feel kind of mundane or just like a repetitive kind of thing that happens in your life, like, oh, I'm going to walk my kid to the bus stop, right? Well, walking around is fun. It's good for you. I don't know. I just thought it would be a word salad that kind of maybe would have some meaning to other people.
I think it's, sorry, not to interrupt. I don't know. Just kind of thinking through, like, so going back to like a lifestyle philosophy, like the active act of like trying to hit some of these, like, I think that's nice, because think back on some of like the better days that you're having, right? Like I'm a creature of habit, very routine, and a lot of my routines like have some of these already like baked into them. Like, and so I find fulfillment in that, whereas Heather's much more of like a spice of life type person, where she would rather, I think she would pick like a variation of these, if that makes sense. Whereas for me, it's like I literally every day walk around. Like I go for a walk either every day, or I'm playing volleyball, and that's the only times I don't. But sometimes I will double up and I will still like go for a walk. It's been one of the best things, like mental health wise, is literally just getting outside every single day.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah, touching grass isn't just a meme. It is good for your health.
Oh, well, when we were in our apartment too, I mean, first it started as like a health thing, and then we moved after our flood, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, some other time. But like, when we did that, we moved down to even a smaller, from a 2-bedroom apartment down to the 1-bedroom, because that's all that was available at the time. I had to get out because it was like, it felt like a prison cell at times, where I'm like, dude, I am either sitting at my desk where I game and I was working as well and like everything, or I'm like in bed and I'm like, this isn't good for me. So doing that, loving that. But I'm not the biggest when it comes to like I'll be on Discord and stuff nearly every night doing something with friends online, but like it feels so good to just go out, and I have to be convinced of that all the time. And I don't know if Heather will ever listen to this, but so don't tell her if she doesn't. But like, I thoroughly enjoy like the nights we go out with everyone and like hang out. Like we went and did trivia on Thursday, and getting to see people. Like, I usually get over it a lot faster than she does. Like, she wants to stay to the bitter end, and I'm like, all right, I'm good. I'm big on like, let a good thing be a good thing, and then kind of sail off into the sunset. Like, I'm gonna leave before everyone else does and be like, deuces, has been a good time, and just love that. So, but yeah, that's great. I find a lot of, looking through these, it's just like, there's times where, obviously, I mean, I'm a big boy. I like me some good delicious food, so I'm gonna do that too. But going through, I think for me, probably the most fulfilling, and I did not know this word either, the amelioration. working towards a betterment of something to, for example, work on a skill you hope to improve. I find that so fulfilling. Like when, I don't know about you guys. I feel like it's very similar. I know for Nick it is, but like anytime I know that I have something coming up, I will watch, or like if I'm trying to make a decision, I will watch so many YouTube videos. I will research, I will Google, I will do so much work. I'm not one to get into, oftentimes I don't get into action first and then like mess up and iterate on that. It's like before I do something, I want to know the right way to do it, like based on other people's failures, and then get into it. And it just works. That's what works for me, that type of thing. So like if I'm gonna buy a tool for a project, I'm gonna see how other people have like bought those tools and like, messed that up or made mistakes and then learn from it and try to do that. I'm not very good about self-iterating on things, if that makes sense. Like I get more frustrated than anything. So I'd rather know the right way or know a successful way to do it and then iterate on it when I've already hit a level of success, and then be able to kind of like adjust from there, if that makes sense. So those are kind of the ones that kind of stick out to me, where I'm like, I really like working towards betterment there, but like my baseline, like I usually don't start from zero. Or like I I don't have the level of doing that. Like if I know I'm going to start way far back on something, like an area, oftentimes for a long time, like whether it was like starting a business type thing, or if it's, a brand new hobby, or trying to get into something else, or like something I don't know how to do, or, and I'm starting from ground zero, I will struggle at times to like get going. But I do love that feeling when you can just tell, like, okay, I have improved on this. So, Walker,
Yeah.
any of these stick out to you?
Well, what I would say, my reaction is that any or all of them, but I think the most important thing about the list is recognizing them. And I've done a form of this for a long time personally, just try to, at the end of the day, tell myself or go through the day and see what I can pick out that I learned that was new. And so I don't know if that what category strictly that would fall into, maybe amelioration, but just I think a day is wasted unless you can find something that you learned that was an improvement, or it doesn't even have to be a good thing, but just something that expanded your knowledge base. So that resonates with me. And further, I think the most key point of any of these is just taking that time. And that's why I've done the exercise for so long, is because just taking the moment to reflect, I think, is even more valuable than picking any one or two or three of those out of the group. Just taking that time, I think, is actually at the end of the day what brings the joy, or brings the thinking back on it, because we so often miss it in the moment. So that's the secret 10th one, or whatever you want to call it.
That's your wild card.
The wild card.
Yeah, that's my wild card.
So let me ask you this. Do you document this in any fashion, or is this purely introspective thought?
Purely introspective. No, I mean, maybe
Okay.
I should document it, but a lot of them are really stupid. You can only learn so much in a day.
Well, stupid subjective.
I learned about engineering requirement creation today, so that was very interesting. And vacuum and UV standards. That was what I chalked up today. So yeah, there you go. Yeah,
Big standards guy.
Big standards guy.
Big standards guy.
Oh God, IEC 6601 is my life. Shout out to all my IEEE homies. Anyway.
I do find myself like driven by situations coming up in life. So like the enthrallment delight. So for reference, like, when we were buying this house, like we knew we sold a house in Indianapolis, moved to Louisville. We were in an apartment for a couple of years. We knew we were going to do that. And so we just put away money for that. Once we figured out we were staying here in Louisville and we knew like Heather was going to be working here, I already had a job here, stuff of that sort. The level at which I dove in to make sure I understood, I could feel the heartbeat of the real estate market in Louisville. Like having an idea. Our like date nights would usually like, we go out to dinner or something like that. And then we get like ice cream or something. And then we go and like see houses, like not even go in the houses, just like look up listings, be like, oh, this looks like a nice house. Let's go see the neighborhood. And then write down the name of it, like that kind of stuff. I will just hyper fixate on stuff like that because maybe it's a little bit of fear of like, okay, we're going to mess this up or something of that sort. But it's a process that works really well for us. And I do find delight in it, right? Like, there's something so nice in this also kind of ties us back to the first topic. There's something really nice when someone in the relationship is very, being married or whatever relationship, maybe it's just a close friendship. Someone is really, really, really into something, but maybe they've not shared that or engaged other people in that. And when you, for the first time, do try to engage someone else in that, and that is reciprocated, like in a respectful way, and like they understand, or they're like, hey, like I've not thought about it this way, but they don't like belittle it or like push it aside and do that kind of thing. So I have found that it is so key that like if you're trying to bring someone into that, you need to find the right timing, because it's not typically that person doesn't care. It is that you are bringing it up at a time when they've had a very long day and they've, something of this not in the mindset, and then you're just going to get pissed because they didn't want to talk about finances at the exact same time. Talk about finances. Ask me how I know. That
read the
kind
room.
of situation when I'm like, okay, I want to talk about disability insurance because I've been thinking about it all day, but I don't realize that you just came off a long day of working on this, that kind of thing. And so, and sometimes just to get through that, you just have to engage with coitus, and then you just get.
Thank you. I wanted to bring that. I wanted to implement that into the conversation so bad, but I didn't find a good spot. So thank you.
Yeah. So
to insert yourself, as it were.
I'm still waiting for my boss to wake up so he can respond to my text.
Right.
I asked him what that was, but I'm not sure. No, I think it's a cool concept. It's one of those things where I'm not sure that I would have ever been able to put something like this on paper, but like the idea of just saying like, what are we actively working towards every day is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I kind of want to steal Walker's pondering on things that you've learned for the day, maybe as a way to end our show. It has been difficult for me to think about what I've learned today, though.
What did you learn today? It doesn't have to be. It can be anything.
Yeah, at the risk of turning this into me just talking about hunting stuff all the time, but that's where I'm hyper fixated right now. But I was watching several episodes of Meat Eater, and I did learn about the nilgai.
They're delicious.
Yeah, in Texas, it's the largest antelope of Asia. They're from the Indian subcontinent, but somehow a bunch of them got to Texas, and now there's now there's a million of them, and they have no natural predators, and so there's no season.
Huge.
Yeah, they're big, and you can just go out and get them, and they serve them at restaurants. Yeah, within reason.
People don't just lose the nilgai, but if one wanders onto your land. And this has happened to me before, not with the nilgai, but an aoudad has wandered around the property. I hunt on sometimes, and they're not protected because they're non-native animals. Because everybody in Texas has to have wild game.
What is this animal? How do you spell it?
Aoudad. Obviously, you could tell how you spell it. Honestly, I'm not sure. A-U-D.
Oh, I see.
A-O-U-D. Something. It's a Barbary sheep. They're from North Africa.
Yes, it is. Holy shit. I've never seen,
because they're endemic to Africa and not to the United States, except for Texas.
In Texas, yeah.
So I ran up on one of these one day. I was just wandering around. and just hanging out in the bushes. I let him go, but
I don't know that I
'cause
would have had that self-restraint.
well,
Well, I guess if you
Imported in the 50s. Does that
if
sound
you
right?
think about it, you have
Yeah.
to gut it and pack it out and
it's a whole thing.
deal with it. Yeah.
I didn't have the appropriate firearm with me either, and that would have been irresponsible. So
Yeah, and that takes us back to making an ethical shot.
So regardless, totally legit. If you find a nilgai, as far as I'm aware, my knowledge of Texas, game law, but there's a ton of these properties, and especially in South Texas, and the nilgai is delicious. There's a guy in Austin who makes nilgai burgers, and they're really fucking good.
Is it Jesse?
It is.
Yeah, he was on that episode that I was watching. They went through the whole thing, butchering like different recipes and stuff. They did a ceviche with raw nilgai heart.
I believe it. Raw
There's
heart's
all
really
kinds
good. Heart is an interesting meat. I enjoy it.
But yeah, that's what I learned, that they were not native to Texas and they get shot and served in
Restaurants.
So, most of the rest of my day was not thinking about anything.
Good.
That's fair.
What did you do?
I don't know that
sex?
I don't know that that's
sorry.
helpful though, as I have a wedding on Saturday. Should be thinking about logistics, but
Do have a wedding.
I'll save that for Friday.
Well, really, you shouldn't be thinking about logistics because you should have all these logistics finished at this point, right, Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. You're right.
But it sounded like from the beginning of the pod that you are a logistics expert. So you should have this all under control.
Did I say that?
I think so.
Play it back.
Yeah, we'll run it back. I didn't learn a whole lot today. I'll be real honest with you boys. I go back. I'll look through my watch history for YouTube just because that's my running. Anytime I have an extra time, I'll just throw a video on. A lot of Rich Eisen on there. We got football season, baby, and I'm watching a lot of stuff with that. I did learn that there is a Ghost of Tsushima sequel, or not sequel. They said it's not a direct sequel because it's not sharing the same characters,
Spiritual
and stuff, but it's
follow-up
the same thing. What is the name? Ghost of Yote. I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure.
I don't speak Japanese. I can't pronounce it correctly.
I don't either, but it looks sick as hell. So
yeah.
do that. So yeah, today has been a very introspective, conversational episode. So I appreciate you boys doing this, and so maybe next week lighten it up a little bit, but appreciate conversation as always and everything. So Nick, I am looking forward to coming celebrating with you this weekend. Walker, maybe I'll get to celebrate with you someday.
Who's to say, really? We are on the lookout for a DJ.
I do not have any equipment yet, but that might be a good excuse to get some.
Yeah. Oh, golly gee. Sorry, Heather.
Not sure how I'd fly it to wherever that would need to happen.
That's a lot. So. It's in Maine. It's going to be a ways.
Yeah. So we are we're hopeful for an invite. That would be sick as hell, but we do want to come see you.
As the logistics expert, I figured out how you can get all of this equipment to Maine. Walker has to drive the Bronco, and he will just stop in Louisville on the way.
Leave it there, yeah.
And Saxon can load up all the equipment, drive it out to Maine.
There you go.
I don't think it can go that far.
Yeah, it didn't sound like from other conversations it could go. Actually,
it goes slowly. I think you're good at about a top speed of like 55 to 65. And that's a long way. It's a slow train.
Yes,
is this a drivetrain, transmission, or engine? Or
the transfer case needs some fluid, and as do the differentials.
Some fluid and maybe some more metal.
Depends on how much fluid it needs.
Yeah.
Well, boys, that meant nothing to me. So we're going to call it there. Thank you guys for listening. This has been great.